Thank you very much. Dear students, professors, and friends, it is indeed my sincere pleasure to stand here before you at Humboldt University, a place whose academic legacy has largely influenced German and the overall European thought, politics, and reality. And that is why today's lecture and discussion bear special significance for me, as to come to Berlin is to enter the heart of Europe. There is no better place to speak about what Europe was, what Europe is now, and what Europe is yet to become. 70 years ago, as the continent pieced itself back together, Konrad Adenauer warned, unless we act, events that we Europeans will be unable to influence will overtake us. And these words proved to be prophetic. Throughout the decades of the Cold War that followed, Europe was but an arena divided by an iron line that passed right through this very city. Today, in the newest global reshuffling, we must be aware of the same threat, but a threat with a new twist. And now the question presents itself. In the emerging geopolitical chess, how does the European Union ensures it does not end up as a piece on the board, but as a player? The answer lies in a concept that has made its way from the margins of European political debate to becoming almost an imperative today. And this is strategic autonomy. In today's address, I wish to present how that imperative might be met through three key dimensions that can carry the European project forward. And these are completion, enlargement, and deepening. So to start from the first one, the European Union has been built treaty by treaty, from Rome to Maastricht to Lisbon. However, while the policy perimeter and powers have gradually been expanding, the crucial part remains incomplete. And this is an even stronger political union. A Europe that cannot make collective political decisions at the speed that geopolitical reality demands remains strategically exposed. Consider what this means in practice. Common foreign security policy in the European Union today requires unanimity, meaning that any single member state can veto a common position. And the same applies to defense. Subcontracting security after the terrors of the Second World War outside of Europe was a rational arrangement back then, as it provided time for Europe to rebuild and to recover. Today, dear friends, it might prove too costly. So the completion of Europe's political and security architecture is a precondition for the EU to stand tall in the face of ongoing global uncertainty. Strategic autonomy means capacity to act politically And it means moving foreign and security policy to qualified majority voting, ending the unanimity veto that any single capital can deploy to paralyze the common European action. It means building a genuine European defense, not as a replacement for NATO, whose proud part Montenegro has been since 2017 as well, but as the foundation of a Europe that can defend itself if it must. Secondly, the most profound power of the European Union is the transformative one. And the accession of the former Central and Eastern European countries demonstrated this with historic clarity. Nations that emerged from the decades of the Soviet Union rule became functioning democracies anchored in European laws and values. And EU's global relevance deeply rests on its gravitational pull, the ability to enlarge, dear friends, other countries, thus transforming them from the inside. And as the president of the most advanced candidate country for the EU membership, I can attest the importance of the promise that membership has on Montenegro and on all the other candidate countries. However, to reach its full capacity, enlargement must be based on both political will and principles. And this can be showcased through 4 different scenarios, which are determined by 2 crucial factors in this process. The first one being the political will of the European Union to get in the new member states. And the other one being the political will of the candidate countries to pursue reforms. So the first scenario out of those 4 is the one that I like to call stagnation without recognition. And what is this about? This is a scenario in which a candidate country fails to use this accession process to advance democratically and institutionally, and the EU withholds recognition. And the outcome is a clear loss, both for the candidate country as well as for the EU, because the EU is left with incomplete democracies at its very borders, while the candidate country remains deprived of the benefits of the membership, with forces of de-democratization gaining ground. And predictably, this is the scenario most welcomed by opponents of the European project. And those opponents seize the opportunity to expand their influence at the borders of the European Union. The second scenario is the one that I call progress without accession. And that's the scenario in which a candidate country genuinely invests in institutional reform and democratic standards, yet accession does not follow. And history shows that this often leads to frustration, to regression, and the erosion of hard-earned democratic gains. Don't forget, democracy is not a one-way street. It's a constant daily effort. And in the long run, in this scenario, also both sides lose. So think of the case of Northern Macedonia, the country that even changed its name with no major EU accession progress that followed. The third scenario is the one where the accession happens, but without reforms in a candidate country. So a candidate country demonstrates insufficient democratic progress, yet is admitted primarily for geopolitical reasons. Though some politicians may advocate for this approach, regardless of reform performance, it is ultimately unsustainable and undermining for the fundamentals of the European Union project. And while it may appear to satisfy in the short run both the EU's enlargement momentum and the candidate countries' ambitions, particularly regarding the candidate countries' increased development funding, the long-term cost may be severe. Core values such as the rule of law and effective governance are compromised. And moreover, this scenario creates fertile ground for the adversarial actors to project influence from within the EU. And I come to the fourth scenario, the one of the win-win, where both sides deliver. The candidate country uses the accession process as an external anchor to achieve genuine democratic transformation, to build resilient institutions, to safeguard media freedom, and pursue sustainable economic development. And then is welcomed into the EU as a fully prepared member state. And this is the optimal outcome, the one of the perfect world, one that ensures shared growth, resilience, prosperity, and stability. And it is the one that I envision for Montenegro. And this leads me to my final point, the third dimension, which rests on the EU's need for a deeper integration. So let me give you an example. 70 years ago, at the very formative time for the European community, the first European Commissioner, Walter Hallstein, had a vision, a common European market as the bedrock of future integration. He was able to look beyond the nation state. And thanks to that vision, today, 18 commissions later, the European single market generates nearly a fifth of the global GDP. And this institute carries his name. The market is what makes the Union the world's economic giant. But it is much more than that. It is indeed the European agora, a gathering place of all our societies, stretching from Lisbon all the way to the Baltics. And in a world where only the fittest survive, unchaining European economic potential through deeper integration is so important for the survival of the Union. And in order to achieve this, once again, Europe needs vision, a vision that allows us to finish what people such as Hallstein started. The next generation of economic power will rest on the ability of Europe to innovate and to compete with all other global actors. And in order to do that, Europe needs to remove internal barriers and to create the EU's capital market able to fund innovation and the European growth. And that must be the vision of the current generation of the European leaders. So to conclude, I began this lecture with a warning that we must not allow ourselves to be witnesses of history, but its actors. The Cold War had written Europe's history as that of division. Here in Berlin, that division was the most visible, presented in stone and in wire. And the European Union is the rejection of all of that. A resolution that European countries made in order to overcome those divisions. And it is what made the EU member states some of the most prosperous societies in the world. However, the emerging era brings us back to Adenauer's words as we enter a period of increased competition, uncertainty, and turbulence. And only by engaging in the discussed directions can Europe retain its strategic relevance. A politically complete union can act. An enlarged Europe can lead. And a deeper Europe can compete. And you are the powerhouse of future European politics, and you are the generation which will decide whether Europe rises to this challenge. Thank you very much.